Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare introduce himself. Hare Krishna, everybody. Welcome to our Friday evening program. We have a really special and wonderful guest here with us, Akhandadhi Prabhu, who's come all the way from the UK to be with us here, and he's heads of a very important and interesting project where he studies consciousness and modern science along with Vedic philosophy. And actually, I've attended one of his seminars in the UK before, and I was very, very impressed and very fascinated. So I think you're really in for a treat today. He's been studying this for many, many years. He's been part of the Hare Krishna movement and a revolutionary in the Hare Krishna movement for many years also, since the 70s. So thank you very much for being with us here today, Akhandadhi Prabhu, and I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you for that, Hare Krishna. Really pleased to be back here in Gainesville. This is a real second home for me. Just to kind of introduce a little bit about myself, and then I want to hear just a little bit about who's here with me today. My name's Akhandadhi Das. It's a spiritual name given to me by my spiritual master. I received it from Srila Prabhupada in 1975. This year I've just actually turned my 50th year of connection with Prabhupada and his books. So that was in the place where I was born, Belfast in Ireland, which at the time was a place of a lot of troubles, bombs going off, shootings every day, machine guns, and that, it was crazy. Belfast was, I would say, it was quite the Kiev of its day, but it certainly was a crazy place. But in the midst of all that, I met a devotee who came and knocked on my door and said, "You should take this book and have a read of it." And at the time, I was already interested in Indian philosophy and reincarnation and things, but it didn't quite hold together. It was only when I met that devotee and he started to explain things, I went, I get it. So a little while later, I went and joined the temple at Bhaktivedanta Manor. That's the place in England near London where George Harrison, the Beatles, donated that to us, and was, of course, a big supporter of Krishna consciousness because of his relationship with Srila Prabhupada. So I was there as a monk trained in the ashram. I ended up managing the place as the temple president for 14 years, and had a lot of fun. Actually, phenomenal years of my life, and enjoyed it back to Vedanta Manor. And then I went on to run another center called Buckland Hall. This was a retreat center in a most beautiful part of Britain called the Brecon Beacons. There was mountains, rivers, beautiful countryside. And this was a mansion that went back into, the estate went back to medieval times, but it was a beautiful mansion, and we held retreats and all sorts of spiritual projects for many different groups, particularly, of course, our Krishna devotees. And we had 20-something years of fun in that place. So I'm now retired. And in the last about 15, 20 years, really my focus has been on, as was said, trying to understand the connection between Krishna consciousness and particularly the philosophy of Vedanta, which is the philosophical aspect of the Upanishads, one of the key texts of the Vedas. And it's the same text, the same philosophy or same approach that is there, of course, in the Bhagavad Gita, and particularly another book that we in the Krishna movement follow, the Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's been a lifelong study now, I suppose, of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and particularly in understanding what it has to tell us and how it can solve so many of the conundrums and problems that exist within modern philosophy and modern science. Some years ago, we formed what we call the Science and Philosophy Initiative in the UK, and we were running our own programs and connecting with people, and we had a group of about 10 PhD devotee scientists working with us. Then we discovered that here in Gainesville, you had a similar group as the Bhaktivedanta Institute. So we thought, these are lovely people here, let's join forces with them. So in the last 5-6 years, we've been connecting Europe and America and India and Australia and all over, and Africa as well. We're trying to create a global network of devotee scientists in all sorts of fields. Some of them are involved in science and consciousness and neuroscience, psychology. Some of them are medical doctors, others involved in biology, molecular biology, microbiology, and others in physics, quantum physics, astrophysics, and we've got the lot. So anyone can join us if you have an interest in this sort of thing. But what I want to do tonight is show you what it all hangs on. What all science, what all philosophy hangs on. All right? So we've made a title here, Does Consciousness Come from the Brain? Now we put a provocative title like that because we thought maybe it'd invite a few folk in to see what that's all about. Is anyone here for a first time tonight? Okay. Was it a provocative title that brought you in? Excellent. Good promotion by the team here. So we're going to look at that very question. We've only got a short time. This can only be a little introduction, but it's going to be a bit interactive. There's going to be a couple of little things you can do. But it's a taster for a full day workshop we're doing on this subject and expanding it. Not tomorrow, but the following Saturday. I think it's the 17th.
Everyone's invited. It'll be next Saturday at 10 o'clock. And we should put on the screen the link. But it's in the duck pond. And it's a 30-hour seminar condensed into one day. So it's fast-moving, exciting, combining science, philosophy, and depth of spirituality. It is a ride you don't want to miss. Thank you.
Yes, and we won't literally be in the duck pond, just in case anyone was a little worried. That's bring your swimming trunks. All right. I know that you usually do a little bit of an introduction, but I think I'd like to go on and ask you a major question about what can we know for certain? What's the one thing that we can know absolutely for certain? That's a philosophical question.
Descartes would say, I think, therefore I am.
Yes? Je suis, donc. Je pense, donc je suis. Or cogito, ergo sum.
Everything's on the word present in Latin.
Everyone, but originally he coined it in French, actually.
Well, he spoke French.
He spoke French and he wrote it in French, and then, you know,
then
you had to put it into Latin because that's, as you said,
everything
makes it
sounds more
sound,
impressive.
makes more impressive. So, yeah, why is this thing that I exist? The one thing I can know for certain. Descartes was analyzing this, and he basically kind of concluded, look, my senses are not reliable. Anything I think I know about the world, I could get wrong. Because I see something, it looks far away, is it small? Maybe it's something closer and bigger. How do I know? I stick, you know, these illusions, you stick a stick in the water and it appears to be bent. So your eyes, your ears, we're always playing tricks on us. So I can't rely on my senses. We get things mostly just about right, but we can't be absolutely sure. And I'm going to tease you with a few things later, which will really make question what you think you know about the world. And then he thought, well, and my mind, it's always playing tricks on me, isn't it? It's always thinking up things. So I may believe in all sorts of things, and I think they're correct, but I can't know for certain. But his one thing was that the one thing that I can know for certain is that I'm the one doing the thinking. So the question, do you exist? If I asked you, do you exist? What would be your answer? Remember, if you don't say yes, you're not getting any of the meal that we're about to serve afterwards, okay? We're not going to bother serving to anyone who doesn't exist. So, but yeah, we know we exist. I don't have to prove that to you. It's something you automatically know because each of us, I feel stuff. I see stuff. I know stuff. Therefore, I can conclude I am this knowing thing. I am this thing that's doing the experience. And that we call a pre-philosophical axiom. This is a truth that you know for yourself, that no one can prove to you. I'm not proving it to you. You know what, I'm just picking out that actually each of us already know this. right? Science can't prove it to you. Science can't disprove it to you. It's pre-philosophical, pre-scientific, it's pre-theoretical. It's axiomatic. It's a foundation. So if you're going to think about who you are, how you relate to the world, what you know of the world, you've got to start from somewhere. And there is really no better place than I exist. I know I exist because I feel, I experience, I know. Now, Descartes was the first person in Europe really to come up with this, and we still give him credit. I don't kind of go for a lot of his other stuff, but at least we give him credit on this realization. But actually, this has been written about, discussed for hundreds and if not thousands of years in India as part of the yoga texts, part of the Bhakti texts. And the one philosopher that really brought this home predated, was more in the modern era, but he predated Descartes for about 100 years, was Jiva Goswami. And he developed these. We're not going to get into his meditations on this point tonight, but come next week, we'll get into them in detail for you. So this brings us into this issue of consciousness. Why? Because consciousness really is revealed by the sense of my own existence, right? I have a sense that I exist. Therefore, that's my sense of being, sense of knowing. I have experiences, right? And interestingly, that it is I having the experience. I am the subject of my experiences, isn't it? Right? I feel, I love, I like. I, subject. I am the subject of my experiences. And a very important one is my experiences have phenomenal qualities. That doesn't mean that they're just phenomenal, they're just amazing, you know. We're using it in a different context, which I shall come on to, because this is a little tricky. It's a little tricky to get your head around. But once you understand what this issue is all about, you understand the answer to the question, can consciousness produce, can the brain produce consciousness? You have to excuse me. I got in on a plane from Zurich last night at midnight in Jacksonville, and that's meant it was 6 o'clock in the morning. I'd been up for over 24 hours. So if I fluff a few things today, I've got an excuse. Now, John Searle, a more modern philosopher, summed up those little bits we've just been talking about. And he said, if you've got an explanation for consciousness, if you're going to account for what it is, where it comes from, you have to account for what he called unified, qualitative subjectivity. It brings together those things we just said. The subject, I am the subject of my experiences. I am singular, it's just one me. I may have different views of who I think I am. Selfhood is a different thing. But as me, the thinking thing, I'm one thing. And qualitative, that gets back to the phenomenal properties that we'll talk about in a second. So, is consciousness really produced in the brain? Well, first of all, we should look at all the direct evidence, you know. What is the direct evidence that neuroscience, after decades and decades of really deep research, has come up with to demonstrate that consciousness is a product of the brain? I'm going to show you the full list of everything that they've come up with. That's it, folks. I have shown those slides, at universities throughout Britain, throughout Europe. No one in any department of physics, psychology, philosophy has ever challenged that. Because everyone knows there is no direct evidence that shows that consciousness is produced by the brain. There isn't. There's lots of theories, hundreds of theories. But say there was a crime, a really nasty crime, and the detective is asked, so have you any theories about who perpetrated this heinous murder or whatever it is? And the detective says, yep, I've got hundreds of theories. What's your conclusion? He hasn't got any idea whatsoever. That's the problem. In philosophy of consciousness, in philosophy of mind, so many theories, no one can agree on it and think that any of them actually solves the problem that John Searle set. That are you talking about unified, qualitative subjectivity? You may be talking about some little thing that's happening in the brain, some little pattern of activity, some correlation of brain activity with the report of a conscious experience. But are you talking causation? Are you talking directly one for one? And what I want to show you tonight is the key element that causes problems for all theories of consciousness in which the assumption is that consciousness is produced by the brain. Here's the big problem, okay? The hard problem. It's the experience of phenomenal qualities. Hands up who kind of thinks they know what we mean by the experience of phenomenal qualities. Wow. As many as that. As many as one person. All right. You've got an idea. You've looked into this a little bit.
I'll take a stab at it.
Well, I'm going to actually share it amongst everyone. I want to introduce you to what we mean by phenomenal properties, or what some people call phenomenal experience. I want you to do something that you might have done as a small kid. I learned this in the schoolyard. Take your fingers, put them in front of your eyes, keep both eyes open, and look for the floating finger. No, you got to do this. Yeah, you got to do it. Yeah. Do you see the floating finger? No, maybe a little closer to you, just about a few inches in front of your eyes. Yep. Hands up. Who's got it? Yeah. Sure? You're not sure?
No, I got it.
You got it? No, you're too far apart. You're a little closer together, and be looking at the tips of your fingers. A little closer, yeah. Do you see the finger, little floating finger now? You're too close. You're give them a little further apart. Yeah? Everyone got it? It's really.
I have a question.
Could you hold it?
Okay.
I'm sure it's a really good question. But I want to, this is so important. Now think about what has just happened. You have seen a finger floating in front of your eyes. Yeah? Does that finger exist in the external world? No. But you experienced it. Did you have a real experience of that finger? Huh? Oh yeah, well done. You had a real experience of something that is an illusion, right? Your experience is you actually see an image of a floating finger. Right? Where is that finger? Where is it?
In front of your face.
Is it? No, that finger's in front of my face. That one's in front of my face. Where's the floating finger?
It's in front of your face.
It's not in front of your face. It doesn't exist in front of your face. It's not there. Otherwise, you'd be seeing this one that I'm seeing, but you're not. So it doesn't exist in front of my face. Does it?
I would make the argument that it's one of your existing fingers seeing double, but I can
No.
see- I can see where
I'll
you're
tell you.
coming
I'll give you the explanation. The scientific explanation is your stereoscopic vision. You've got two eyes. If you do that and you close one eye, it disappears. So that means that this eye is picking up that finger there and this one here. And this one now is picking up this one and that one and putting them together. So does that explain it? So it's no problem.
That's where my mind went when I did the experiment.
Now, think about this. Wait a minute. But where does the picture exist? If the picture doesn't exist out there, where is the picture being formed? Behind the eyes? Each eye has a different set of light going into them, right? So this doesn't have the floating finger. This eye doesn't have the floating finger. So it's not out there and it's not in the eyes. Now, the light that this eye is getting is turned into electricity to the back of the brain. This eye is turned into electricity going to the back of the brain. Where's the picture? In the electricity? Electricity is colorful. Electricity has shapes. You can look inside your brain and you'll see canvases, with all sorts of color and movement. Are those qualities of color, shapes, do they exist in the brain? As shapes, as colors, as a floating finger? No, because those qualities are phenomenal qualities. They're properties of your experience, but they do not exist like that in the brain, because the brain's simply got electricity. Like this computer has got electricity. I can stick up a camera to it, it goes in, it's just electrical patterns. It's data. That data may represent the information that it has gathered, but it doesn't do the mixing. It cannot produce the picture. This is the problem. Are you starting to see we've got a bit of an issue here? That the brain's got one thing, but my experience is something totally different. I am experiencing a picture. Now, this isn't just me talking. There was, you've heard of Francis Crick. He was a guy who, along with Watson, discovered the structure of DNA in the 1950s. Very famous scientist, Francis Crick. After he'd sorted that, he thought, well, I've sorted life out, done DNA. Now I'm going to do consciousness. I'm going to sort that out with, and he had a collaborator called Christoph Koch. And the two of them wrote a paper on neural correlates of consciousness, in which they said we'd sorted consciousness out. And then Christoph Koch produces this drawing here. Oh, sorry, I got it here, yeah. Starts with an image of the outside world. And then the light bouncing off those objects comes into the eye. So that's sensory processing. We're using the eye, it's the same with all the senses. Whatever they're doing, they just basically turn information about the world into electricity, which goes into the brain. And there you are, NCC, neural correlates of consciousness. All right, so now we've got neural processing. That's it. That's what the brain's got. That's all. But that's our experience, says Christoph Koch. The qualitative percept, what we experience. It's an image with phenomenal qualities. And because these are qualities of experience, rather than in order to distinguish them from the properties of the external world, we call these properties qualia, right? And they form the big question, qualia, the qualities of our inner experience, what we actually experience, right? So you can see there's a little bit of a sleight of hand here. That you've got this, and he's just saying, yep, these produce this. That's the problem. What is the explanation for how the brain can produce those qualities? And you know what they wrote in that paper? Francis Crick wrote, no one has produced any theory that explains how qualia, oh sorry, I should be doing this, shouldn't I, for others who are not here, No one has produced any explanation as to how these qualities, qualia, are produced by the brain. And he says, in all our theory, we actually ignore qualia. We can't deal with it directly. We cannot explain it. That was true 25 years ago. There was a bet made between a philosopher called David Chalmers and Christoph Koch that in the next 25 years, you're not going to be able to find the neural correlates that explain qualia. That bet's come up this month. In 2 weeks' time, I'm going to be at a conference in New York where they're going to reveal whether who won the bet. So it'll be very interesting because we kind of already know what the situation is on that. That there is no explanation for this, for qualia. Hands up who's heard this word qualia? Oh, a few of you. Excellent, excellent, very good. You've obviously been to some of my previous things. Even at university studying philosophy and philosophy of mind, this is not mentioned. And actually, I think this is a cheat. That universities think that they're willing to talk to their students about consciousness, about neuroscience, about philosophy, and they won't admit we have no explanation for qualia. We cannot explain how this experience of a world as an image happens because it is not available in the brain. And we're going to explain this a bit more. So when we talk about qualia, in this example of the proverbial red ball, philosophers love a red ball, you say, you're experiencing redness and roundness, right? Those are the qualities you're experiencing. And it's different from your experience of blueness. Now, we're not talking about the emotional or psychological effect of color. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the actual phenomenal experience of redness as redness. You see the difference? Yeah, redness kind of maybe feels warm, blueness maybe makes you feel, that's different, that's different. We're talking about the actual experience of the colorness of it. And there are different types of qualia. Very quickly, we'll just talk about those different sensory percepts, because it all happens whenever you eat something. Like here, a picture of an ice cream. Something is happening in your tongue, electricity's been sent to the brain, but you're experiencing that as a flavor. That's a phenomenal quality. When sound enters your ear, again, it's processed. Whatever is that vibration of the world, it's just set up a pressure wave which goes into your ear, and electricity is generated, goes to the brain, but you experience that as a sound. So those are the different types of sensory percepts. There's also internal sensations, feeling hungry, feeling fearful, feeling happy. These are sensations which you feel. There is something that it is like to feel those sensations. Therefore, they are qualitative. Even thoughts and ideas have a certain qualitative experience to them. So qualia are real. There's nothing more real in your world than the qualia you experience. And if you think about it, the only thing you know about the world are your qualitative experiences of it. Isn't it? We know what this room looks like because I'm seeing my picture of it. I know what different things sound like the drums, the harmonium, and so on, because of the qualitative experience of those sounds. I actually don't really know what this world is. I only know it as I experience it. Qualia are real, even if they're illusory, like your floating finger. You had a real experience of that image, even though that image doesn't exist outside, or in the eyes, or in the brain. They are private. They are ineffable. It's impossible to describe qualia. We're not even sure if we all experience it in the same way. For instance, if you had to describe what redness is to someone who had never experienced color, how would you do it? You can't just point and say, well, it's that color there of the skirt, no? Because we don't know what they're experiencing when they see that skirt. We agree that we call that whatever we're experiencing is red, but we're not sure if we're all experiencing the same thing. And the best example was probably this one here, wasn't it? Do you remember this? Okay, we got to do it. We got to do it, don't we? All right? Hands up. The black and blue. The dress is black and blue. Hands up, gold and white. Argue amongst yourselves later. Actually, I don't know, I've got a TEDx talk on when I showed this at the University of East Anglia. And there was 200 students in the room at the time, and it just erupted. There was almost fist fights, you know. We had to kind of calm the situation down. I mean, we could say that the original was blue and black, but that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean anyone who's put up their hand saying blue and black is right and the others are wrong. It's not. Because this image is taken in such a way that different people's minds read it in different ways. The same light is coming from that image into each of our eyes, but something is interpreting it differently and giving us a different qualitative experience. You see? This is the nature. Qualia are internal. They are post-brain experiences. They're not brain experiences, they're post-brain. And another good example when we talk about color. Isaac Newton did a lot of work on spectrums. You know, very famous guy, Sir Isaac Newton, another British scientist. And he was looking at these, at the spectrum. And the idea is, and you're taught this at school, that each wavelength is a specific color. Isn't that what we're told? Yeah? Is that true? That light is colored? Huh?
It's how your eyes work.
No, it's how your mind works.
That's actually more accurate.
Yeah, because all that's happening is with your eyes is you've got three different sensors, three different types of cones. You know, for yellow, for green, blue, and red, and sometimes those get a little mixed up. But here's what Isaac Newton said. All right, well, at that time he thought, if every wavelength represents a different color, then all the colors should be there. But where's magenta? This was his question. Schrödinger asked, he had a different question, but where is magenta? Now again, we can have a scientific answer for that. It's where blue and red are mixed. If you had a blue light and a red light, and I was hoping to have blue light to show you actually that, but when you got a blue light and a red light and you shine them together, in the middle, you see magenta. Okay, does that solve the problem? No, does it? Because you've got to ask, well, where is the mixing happening? If I shine two lights together, are the photons mixing and becoming something different? Are the wavelengths, two different wavelengths produce a new wavelength? No, it's because the color, the blue bits in there are entering in and firing off one of those types of cones. The red bits there are firing off another. So even in your eye, they're not mixed. The messages are sent to the back of the brain. Are they mixed there? Well, if they're mixed there, why is that appearing as a color? Because we know the brain doesn't have any color. Electricity is not colored. Photons are not colored. Electrons are not colored. Where is that mixing happening? Yeah, now we're starting to see that actually there's something going on that is beyond the power of the brain to do it. So, qualia are irreducible. This is the conclusion currently in neuroscience. We have not got any theory that explains phenomenal experience or the experience of qualities such as qualia. That's pretty big, isn't it? That after all that work in physics, in biology, in neuroscience, we cannot explain. And for many philosophers and some of the scientists, their conclusion is we're not going to explain this, which is why so many scientists are now going to theories of consciousness which are not based on what the brain can do. They're looking further afield. So there's obviously a correlation between what our senses receive, what our brain processes, and what we experience. But it's never 100%. This is one of Adelson's checkerboard illusions. And you can see, I don't know if you can, no, this doesn't shine on the thing. You've got that square there, A, and square B. Now, you've probably seen all this before, but are they the same color or the same tone of gray? Do they look the same? No, they don't, right. But, of course, part of the illusion, they are the same, right? So now that you've seen that they are exactly the same tone of gray, when we go back, you'll see that, won't you? You'll see that they're the same, won't you? No, you won't. But they are the same. No, go back. No, it doesn't. So, just to move on a little bit, considering how we analyze the world in physics, understanding in biology what's happening within our senses, we can work that out. Understanding what's actually going on in our brains, we're actually getting really good at that. The neuroscience has advanced incredibly. We can practically work out, we can map different activities in your brain to what you report, your thinking, your seeing, and so on. It's incredible how you can correlate. But those are all the easy problems, it said. This one here, the qualitative thing, what you experience, that's the hard problem. And unfortunately, it doesn't really stop there. The hard problem is a phrase that was actually coined by a philosopher called David Chalmers in 1994. And it was important because it was at a conference in Tucson of science and consciousness, in which he was challenging all the scientists. You're just talking about behavior. You're just talking about correlations, but you're not dealing with the actual hard problem of consciousness. So he has actually put down a challenge, which to this day remains unsolved. But it raises further questions. If that's what we experience, why is that? Why are we experiencing the world like that if our brain has only got electricity? Why are we experiencing it in a different way? And who or what is doing the experiencing of that? Who is conscious of that? So let me just ask you this one. Here's two shots from two different films. One's quite old, in the 90s, the Terminator 2, and more sort of recent one, Iron Man. Okay? One of these contains a philosophical, scientific error. They're both shots where the director of the movie is trying to see, we're trying to get inside what's going on here. This is inside the Terminator and what he's experiencing. This is what Dr. Stark is experiencing. But which has got the philosophical error? Why?
Because with the Terminator picture, we can actually see the qualia. I guess from this, exactly what he's experiencing from his perspective, but with Iron Man, we're just seeing him experience.
I'm afraid you're absolutely the other way around. Sorry. Actually, Think about it. The Terminator's a machine. He has a computer chip. Why would a computer, for its own purposes, ever turn the data that it is receiving in its sensors into something qualitative? Computers don't have pictures inside the CPU. Computers don't need to do that. It's like if you've got a car with one of these sensors, you know, for reversing, beep, 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 right? Is that beep to help the car know that something is behind it? No, it's not. Why is the beep there? To let, yeah, the computer is trying to let something that is not itself know about it, right? So a computer does not need to turn its data into text and writing, especially with mistakes and spelling and things like that, but it doesn't do that. Whereas here, the exoskeleton that he's got with its sensors has to present that on a screen so that the human can see what's going on, because we cannot read data in a CPU. We need it translated for us. Something has to act as the interface between that thing which is processing data digitally and the experience that we have of that data. You starting to see where we're going on this? Right? So ultimately, what we're suggesting is we've got 3 different types of functions happening. They are distinct, and they need to be regarded as distinct in philosophy and in science. That's our key message, that you've got the world and physical and biological properties, which together are a brilliant way of modeling what is happening within this world. And all our technology is built on that. Fantastic. However, we also have cognitive properties, and this is where qualia reside. This is what is translated from this information. It's translated into qualities, what you experience. And what is doing the experience is different again. So we have consciousness properties and functions. 3 types of functions, 3 types of properties. All right? Now, you might say, well, what are they all made of? What's consciousness made of? What's mind made of? Are we making this stuff up? No. We've just proved that we need to postulate these properties. We know they exist. We know quality is it. We've just proved that to ourselves, haven't we? And we've proved also that we are the experiencer of those things. So we know these properties exist. We know that's true. Now, in anything that science does, particularly in physics, when it tries to understand what is the world made of, what does it end up talking about? Properties and functions. Science never tells you what anything is made of. It only tells you what these little components look like and what they do. Their functions, what they do, and what they look like, what are their properties, how they interact together. If you look at the standard model of physics, electrons and quarks and bosons, you see they're all defined not in terms of what they are, but in terms of their properties and functions. So the only way that you can ever understand this world is by thinking of what is out there and what is inside us in terms of properties and functions. So that is why the Vedas look at this and see that there are 3 distinctive types of functions and properties which you need to know about in order to understand how you are conscious. We already know that we are conscious and that we exist, but this is the description that helps to explain how we are conscious. I refer to the Atma as the entity of consciousness. So the Atma, the source of our faculty of consciousness. And the mind is then the interface between the body and all its sensors and its brain and its nervous system. And the mind takes all that data, represents it to us in a format that we understand and appreciate, qualia, and the Atma goes about the experiencing. So that three-function model works to explain. I mean, I'm nearly there, and then I'm going to take open to questions. This is just a little final little kind of section. So the Atma is real. Sometimes people say, "Are you bringing up the soul?" Now, the soul is not really a very technical term, is it? You know, everyone's got a different idea what they mean by soul, right? Is it music? Is it love? Is it, you know, what are we talking about? Is it your passion? You know, what? No, we're talking Atma. And we're trying to be very specific. The Atma is that thing which has the properties and functions of conscious experience. All right? That's what the Atma is. And that's real. And the mind is real because we know qualia are real. So mind is that thing which holds and processes qualia. So that must be real. Is the world and everything else real? That's actually where the question mark is. The amazing thing is, you know, we normally think, well, that's the real stuff. Mind, oh, that's just airy, fairy, woo stuff. And consciousness, oh my God, you know, we're lost at that one. No. That we're guaranteed is real because that's what we know we are. We know we are conscious. Therefore, consciousness must exist. All right? Now we know consciousness experience qualia. Right? So now we know the mind exists. The world? Well, probably, yeah. We'll give it a tick as well, okay? Because if the world wasn't real, then probably we wouldn't be able to agree on so much, even though we disagree about a girl's dress. You know, but most of the time we tend to agree on what's out there, right? So we're assuming that there is a certain reality out there, which is giving rise to the reality of our qualia, which then establishes the reality of our experience, the ability to have that experience. And we know the world and the body-brain interact. We do that all the time. We take that one for granted. Now we understand how the brain and the mind are interacting. It's not exactly one-to-one. There is an interpretation and a representation of the world being made by the mind to us. We're experiencing qualia as a representation of the world. Exactly what that world is, that's, you know, philosophers still discuss, but at least we know what its representation is. And we know that we are experiencing qualia, so there is an interaction there. There is no problem with the interaction between these properties and functions. Descartes made a complete hash of that one. Complete mess, and it has screwed up Western philosophy ever since. But when you actually analyze it from this perspective, that we know consciousness exists, then you can see how it works. If you're stuck in that the only thing exists is the physical, you think there are problems because you haven't recognized that qualia are not part of that world, and you haven't recognized that consciousness cannot be explained in terms of this world either. So that's why, because they each are real and each interact, we say they are part of one single ontology. Means that there is just one reality which holds all these properties together. The world is and reality is a realm of diversity of properties and functions. And consciousness is just one part of that spectrum of reality that gives rise to the properties of consciousness. Mind is another part of that spectrum of reality, which gives rise to the ability of the mind to have qualitative, phenomenal properties. And the physical world is another part of that spectrum, giving rise to the properties we know of in physics. and then interpret in chemistry and biology and all the rest. So that is a kind of our picture, and that provides the kind of metaphysical framework for an approach to philosophy and science we're calling the Atma paradigm. Paradigm means it's just a different way of seeing. Rather than being stuck in this physicalist idea, which has no hard evidence to support it, and which doesn't deal with the most important issue of our own existence and experience. Rather than being stuck in that physicalist hole, we need a new paradigm. And we're basing that paradigm on ourselves. That I am this thinking thing, I am this experiencing thing, I am this conscious entity. I am an Atma. And from that, we can build a picture of the world more clearly. So, this Atma paradigm, it's built on that pre-philosophical axiom, I exist. It reinforces our pre-theoretical insights, which you haven't really gone into here. Next week, we'll go through those insights in more detail, where you're able to kind of expand from I exist into seeing a few new things. It fulfills John Searle's theory of consciousness because it does deal with unified qualitative subjectivity. And philosophically, logically sound. You know, it's science consistent. There is nothing in neuroscience, nothing in physics which contradicts anything I've said. The interpretations often spoken of in the name of science may seem different, but that's interpretations, that's theoretical, that's really more philosophical. But the actual data is not in contradiction with any of this. It's methodological. Everyone uses this threefold system. We're working with some people who are involved in developing prosthetics for people, say, missing a limb. And one of the issues is, how do you get the body, the person, to be able to take possession, domain of that prosthesis? What do? You talk to that individual as a conscious being, and you get them to try and then control their mind, so that the mind sets up the electrical activity in the brain, which allows signals to be sent to the prosthesis. You're following this process from consciousness to mind to the physicality. So it's practical and it has applications. It supports human values of free will, purpose, and love. That's one of the big issues that many people have pointed out, with the idea that if consciousness is just in the brain and everything is just my neurons firing, where's free will in that picture? Where is anything that we kind of value together as humans? Where's love? Oh, you know, my neurons fired and I've fallen in love with you. You know, that's very romantic. You know, and there you go. So, I think we've got time for a few questions. Very interesting. Sorry. No,
I forgot my question.
or have we dealt with it?
Yes, no, I was just, because I was not able to see the closing figures, so I was going to ask you at that time, like, what's, that was my question basically. What do you mean by floating finger?
Okay, well, at least did you actually get to see your floating finger?
No.
Oh, keep practicing. Keep practicing. Sorry. You can't do it with one hand, of course.
No. There's a way to, like, you can line it up using one eye and then the other eye. You can move it.
Yeah, you can start to see.
I'll show you. I remember now. I'll show you.
You remember now.
So my question is that if when we're looking at the paradigm from Atma, beginning from Atma to going to the mind and then going to the physical world, and we are saying Atma is real and so is the mind is real, and then we go to the part where the world, we're questioning the world, is it real? And we say that it's real because we agree upon so many things and we say it's real. But my question is, how do we see that the world is actually an illusion?
In Krishna consciousness, we're not actually asking you to see the world as an illusion. See, there are philosophies there are Indian philosophies, particularly Advaita Vedanta, which is, frankly, a newcomer on the field. The British thought that Advaita was the only Vedanta, and that still hangs on in a lot of Western academia. They think that Advaita Vedanta, which is non-dual Vedanta, is the only way. And Shankara made this statement, Brahma Satyam Jagat Nitya. The world is real, or Brahman is real, and the world, Jagat, is not, is false. That's not a Vedic statement. He made that up. So that, we don't actually have to accept that because it's not a Vedic thing. Whereas prior to Shankara, philosophers actually recognized that there is a reality to this world because it takes real stuff to create an illusion. It takes real fingers to create the illusion of the floating finger, doesn't it? So you can't have an illusion without reality. So our view is not to worry about the world being real or unreal. The world is perfectly fine on itself. The real problem is what you think about yourself. The real difficulty is that we think our own consciousness is not real. We think it's just a product of the brain. We think I am this body. We think, therefore, I only exist as long as this body exists, from birth to death. That's the illusion. When actually I am consciousness. And next week we'll be exploring the qualities of consciousness, which really sort of challenge that illusion.
So just to add over there, so the illusion and the real stuff that's making the illusion, they both are existing together.
Yes. There has to be a real world in order for real mind to interpret that. Maybe it makes a mistake in interpreting, as we see.
Sure.
And we are having a real experience of that illusion.
Another question I had.
We'll get back to you.
More of a comment. I just wanted to say that I was surprised to learn that the color purple doesn't exist.
Magenta. Magenta doesn't exist.
Purple, magenta, it's kind of the same.
It really actually questions...
I guess violet, magenta doesn't exist outside of our minds.
Well, actually, none of the other colors exist outside of your mind. That's what you should be taking from that. None of them do.
Right.
That's the problem. Color, we only can say for sure that color exists as qualia. We're not actually sure what, we think, what's a sort of orangey thing, isn't it? Peachy, orange, but all we know is that light at a certain wavelength bounces off that. But we don't know what really is doing that bouncing. Now we think we know because we can mix up the paints and slap them on and, we're very good at that. But actually, we don't know if that exists as color out there. We only know that we experience. Our mind is taking that wavelength and telling us, here's a color. I'm throwing this color up for you now. This is what you're experiencing. And some people with different, who are tetrachromats, who've got 4 types of cones, they're said to experience something like, I think, 100 or 1,000,000 times more colors than we do. They see colors we can't see. Right?
Animals.
Weird. Animals, and as well, birds particularly are tetrachromats. So there's one tetrachromat lady who's an artist, and she tries to draw paintings of all the colors that she's experiencing. But guess what? When we see the picture,
We don't see what she sees.
we don't see what she sees. So other thoughts, questions? So we're back to her.
I had an inference from what you just presented. Would it be right to say the experience of qualia will change with the change of the consciousness of the person. So if you're elevating our consciousness, the qualia is upgrading. It changes. It completely changes. It transforms the way we are looking at the world.
Qualia can be changed even without raising our kind of conscious ability as the Atma. Simply, if we're feeling dull, if you take intoxicants, if you take psychedelics, you will experience different qualia. Basically, the brain is doing something different and mind's going, what the heck's going on there? You know, I've got this, like in dreams.
But that would be temporary.
In dreams, you know, the brain is firing off from some of the memories and things that happened earlier. It's firing again. And the mind is going, hey, I've got you looking at a picture of a watch. This is a true one. This is, you know, because I sometimes try to analyze my dreams after, you know, and see where on earth did that lot come from. So this is one. The mind is looking at, there's something about him looking at a picture of a watch, because in Switzerland, you know, where I've been staying recently, they're famous for their watches, and they plaster them up all over the place. And there's something about whatever he was eating, and therefore does that mean I should be telling him he's eating a watch? So that was my dream. I was taking apart a watch bit by bit and eating it. When I woke up the next morning, I was going, I could practically feel them. And my mind had told me that it had put together daft things. The mind is capable of putting daft things, and that you experience qualia in dreams. Now, if you elevate your consciousness, there is different things will happen. There actually will be a clarity to your sensory perception. But a lot of that is from what we call a sattvic lifestyle, that you're no longer deadening your senses with certain substances or food or whatever, or activities. You're actually allowing your senses to really come alive. So the qualia really become very vibrant. But spiritual experience is even a stage beyond that.
Can you go back to the slide with the back a little more? Yes. I have a question for you.
Sure.
Where would you put time on that graph?
That's a really important question. I wanted. Have you had any chance of coming to be with us next week?
I can't have work, but
Saturday,
I am very interested in
right,
consciousness, so it's something
right,
I think and
I'll
read a
give you
lot
this,
about.
It's not a spoiler for next week. It's just one of the things we'll look at in detail.
Okay.
Next week is being recorded.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I might
All right.
watch that.
Time, what does it do? It allows things to change.
Yes.
Basically, time facilitates change.
Yes.
Now, there's a lot I could go into on that, but that's just the physical and biological properties change over time. Cognitive properties, such as qualia, change over time. But the observer is watching the change from this moment to the next. So the Atma, the same self, we are not only the witness of what we are observing in the world, we are the persistent witness. We are the same self looking at each moment. Therefore, it's questionable whether consciousness is outside of time, not changed by it.
I don't actually know what I would say about this. I'm still kind of working it all through. But if you think about yourself in high school, right? Like, would you say that that's the same person you are now? Do you look back on that person and be like, yeah, I agree with all their points of view. They really had it figured out, high school me. Or would you say that your observer, yourself has changed since then?
You, as the observer, have not changed. You observed your mind
Okay,
changing.
okay.
You
I'll-
observe your thoughts
I'll-
changing, your personality
Okay,
changing.
yeah.
Everything about it.
I'll buy into that. That's logically consistent.
Yeah, I mean, actually, if I ask you, go back to your first day at school. Go back to this childhood time at school. You know? Can you remember your first day at school? Yeah? Maybe not exactly what happened, but you kind of feel, you were there. It was you who did the feeling. You who did the experiencing. That's you there. And you're here now. Of course you've grown up, I hope. Of course you've changed and matured in your thinking, But that doesn't mean, that's mental stuff.
So
that's this stuff changing.
The Atman would just be a witness. It is no more than a witness in this paradigm.
Nope.
Okay.
Because all we've been able to do today is really look at the flow of perception, information about the world flowing in this direction. But that has revealed that these are distinctive qualities. What we're about to propose is that there is a further faculty of consciousness, volition, will, which allows information to flow this way. And that's a whole interesting, that's when things really start to get interesting, when consciousness is driving the mind and driving the world. Sorry, you want to pass it back to our friend back there?
Thank you for the wonderful talk. I was wondering what the difference was between the brain and the mind in the ontology that you have on the screen.
Okay, well, in terms of the brain, we know that operates by physics, and it's a biological system of living cells, neurons, which have the capability of sending an electrical signal onto the next, and basically that's all they do. It's nothing magical. They are just gates, very similar to what we have in a computer. They're just gates which fire. We'll talk about them next week, and you'll see that actually there is something very interesting happening within the neurons that looks like they are not setting the control, that something is controlling them. So whatever is happening in the brain, we know that it doesn't have a picture. We've got to come to that conclusion. So we've got to put the picture somewhere else, right? Whatever, the world is picturesque, yes, whatever that is, whatever is out there. But it's not the picture we see. The picture we see is post-brain. Therefore, we need a category of stuff that is post-brain. And that stuff that is post-brain is somewhere in between the world and the brain and us as the experiencer. So hence, we say it's like the interface. It's really just like my computer, isn't it? I don't know what's going on in the CPU. I couldn't care less. I can open up a program that'll show me all the programs that are running. And you kind of go, what the heck? That's all subconscious. I don't know about those. I don't even care about them. I just want this to show me nice YouTube clips and things. Right? TikTok video, whatever. I just want the gratification from the interface, right? That's how the Atma treats its body and brain. We don't care how it works. We don't care. We just want it to give us things to entertain us. We want it to give us the pleasure of eating, the pleasure of taste, the pleasure of sights, the pleasure of sounds. That's really the model that we've got, However it can do it, we just want the interface stuff.
The discussion can continue with you over dinner.
Over there, yes.
Okay.
It's just a comment I needed to make. It just seems like it's the shloka from the Gita. What we just read as a shloka in the Gita is just being translated in a scientific way.
Really? You think that's something? Well, that's fascinating. Yes.
The soul is the the Atma is the observer, and
Well, I do have to admit, I'm not trying to, I haven't approached this in trying to prove the Gita. Rather, what we've tried to do is look at the problems that we know exist and say, is there anywhere that has dealt with that problem? If you're doing you're doing a PhD thesis, right? You're looking at a problem on storing, he's trying to store heat in a capsule, you know? Yeah, right. It's really important environmental work that he's doing, you know, so we all give him his blessings. But basically, when any of you start a thesis, what's the first thing you do? I've got a problem, I've got a question. Does anyone else know about this? Has anyone else researched it? Has anyone looked into it? So when we look at these problems that modern science and philosophy have, we have to ask, has anyone ever addressed this before? Descartes didn't do a good job. None of the Western philosophers, the Greeks didn't do a great job on it. But the Vedantists and the yogis did. They really cracked this one because they spent their lifetimes in communities delving into consciousness and how consciousness works. So should we not borrow from a source that was already written and published and had peer reviews of their material? Yeah, and that's the point. It actually has gone through that process. These guys argued like crazy over what they were studying. This is authoritative academic information from the Gita and the Bhagavad Gita. All right? All right, no, I better off there. Otherwise, so sorry. I really don't want to cut this short. It's absolutely fantastic.
And maybe this deserves another round of applause. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for really enlightening us. And I also had no idea about next Saturday, but perhaps for anyone who's interested to join, can see either Akhandadhi himself, Brahmatirtha, or Nitai, and Christina as well, yeah. And it'll be a really good follow-up to what we were here today. We're going to end with another kirtan. I know this may be the first time for a few of you here to Krishna House. Is it anyone's first time doing kirtan, that's chanting Hare Krishna? We've all done that before. Oh, okay, a couple of people. So I'll just briefly explain.
Anyone here for the last time?
Hopefully not. We heard so much about experiences, qualia, the Atma. So chanting mantras, it's a spiritual experience through sound vibration. And just like we talked about, this idea of Atma is peer reviewed. It's argued about, it's discussed, it's thought about and proven from so many philosophers. Same kind of thing with mantra chanting, and specifically chanting Hare Krishna. And the Hare Krishna mantra consists of just 3 words, Hare Krishna and Rama. These are words of the Supreme, words of God, names of God rather. And it's done in a call and response form. If you were here in the beginning, we did a little bit of kirtan. So for the next 10 minutes or so, we'll do a little bit of kirtan and then we'll have dinner afterwards. So I'll hand it over to Advaita.
Yeah, we can all stand up, please. We're going to do a little energizer, stretch up.
Yes, I did.
No, I don't. Oh, yes, I'll see you after the talk.
Also feel free to come closer. Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namah Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunnavadi Pastyathyadishakarine Namaste Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, bolo bolo, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, bolo bolo, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,